The night was heavy with rain as Professor Edward Langford stood before his final lecture hall, his voice trembling with urgency. The small crowd listened in silence while thunder echoed through the old university walls. Edward Langford said, "Humanity stands at the edge of its own undoing." His words cut through the storm like a blade. Dr. Amelia Cross sat in the back, her notebook trembling in her hands as she watched him speak with the conviction of a man carrying unbearable truth. Dean Richard Voss watched quietly, face unreadable, as Langford's tone shifted from academic to apocalyptic. Edward Langford said, "My work has shown what must never be known." He glanced toward the sealed briefcase beside him, the one said to contain his life's research. "Dr. Marcus Hale whispered to Amelia Cross, "He's losing his mind." But something in Langford's eyes said otherwise. The lights flickered, a rumble tore through the hall, and fire alarms screamed. Edward Langford whispered, "Forgive me," before flames consumed his notes. By dawn, the university was cordoned off by police tape. Dr. Amelia Cross stood before the charred ruins of the lecture hall, the smell of wet ash thick in the air. Dr. Marcus Hale joined her, eyes filled with disbelief. Marcus Hale said, "No one's seen him since the fire." Amelia Cross said, "He didn't run. He knew this would happen." A gust of wind carried a half-burned note toward her boots, words faintly visible. "The world must not know." Dean Richard Voss stood behind the crowd, face calm, speaking softly to investigators. Amelia Cross watched him, realization dawning that this was only the beginning. The media descended by noon. Reporters shouted theories while drones hovered above the scorched university courtyard. Dr. Amelia Cross ignored them, scrolling through an old recording of Langford's lectures. His voice echoed faintly, "They warned me not to show it." She paused the video at a frame showing a symbol carved into the blackboard, a spiral burning inward. Marcus Hale said, "What did he mean by they?" Amelia Cross whispered, "The same people who tried to silence him." She felt eyes on her, noticing Laura Whitmore watching from a nearby car. Later that night, Amelia Cross sat in her dim apartment, replaying Langford's voice again and again. Each time she caught a new detail. A sound of wind, a distant ticking, a faint whisper. Dr. Marcus Hale's call broke her trance. Marcus Hale said, "You're chasing ghosts, Amelia," she said. "Ghosts leave traces." On her table lay a burned fragment showing the words Project Aether. She didn't notice the email appearing on her laptop screen from Clara Wynne. The message read, "You're looking in the wrong place." At dawn, Amelia Cross met Marcus Hale outside the sealed university archives. The building was silent, except for humming security lights. Amelia Cross said, "Langford left something here." They entered through a maintenance door, flashlights sweeping dust and cobwebs. In the corner, behind old filing cabinets, a hidden recorder blinked faintly. Marcus Hale pressed play, and Edward Langford's voice emerged through static. "If you're hearing this, it's already too late." The air grew colder, and both stood frozen as a coded sequence of tones followed, like a countdown. Morning light broke through heavy clouds as Dr. Amelia Cross sifted through the wreckage of Professor Edward Langford's laboratory. The smell of chemical smoke still lingered. Dr. Marcus Hale stood nearby, flashlight trembling in his hand. Amelia Cross said, "He didn't destroy everything." Beneath a half-burned cabinet, she uncovered a glass cylinder filled with ash and fragments of melted metal. Inside lay a disc etched with strange mathematical sequences. Marcus Hale said, "It's encrypted." Amelia Cross replied, "Or it's something we were never meant to read." She felt an unease settle over her, the faint whisper of Langford's warning echoing in her mind, reminding her that truth sometimes hides inside ruin. Later that day, Dean Richard Voss met Amelia Cross in the university's marble corridor. His expression was calm, eyes calculating. Dean Richard Voss said, "You're wasting your time. Langford's theories were delusions." Amelia Cross said, "Then why did you seal his office hours after the fire?" The echo of her voice filled the hallway. Richard Voss smiled faintly, hands behind his back. Dean Richard Voss said, "Some knowledge invites chaos." He turned away, leaving a thin envelope on a nearby bench. Inside were photos, Langford, Hale, and Cross, taken before the fire. Amelia Cross' heart pounded as she realized someone had been watching all of them. At sunset, in the old faculty archive, Laura Whitmore appeared quietly beside Amelia Cross. She wore a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. Laura Whitmore said, "Langford sent me a copy of his research before he vanished." Amelia Cross said, "You expect me to believe that?" Laura Whitmore replied, "Believe what you wish." But he feared someone far above Voss. As she spoke, Dr. Marcus Hale entered, suspicion clear on his face. The three stood beneath flickering lights as tension grew. Amelia Cross said, "Show me what you have." Laura Whitmore handed her a data drive marked Aether Fragment 2A. Back at her apartment, Amelia Cross projected the recovered data across her wall. Equations danced in glowing lines of blue. Dr. Marcus Hale paced behind her, muttering. Marcus Hale said, "Half of this is theoretical physics. Half is something else." Amelia Cross replied, "Something that predicts energy collapse." Then she noticed a series of recurring spiral symbols identical to those from Langford's lecture board. The patterns pulsed as if alive. Amelia Cross whispered, "He wasn't warning us about a discovery. He was warning us about what it would do." Outside, thunder began to roll again, as if echoing Langford's ghost. Hours later, Amelia Cross and Marcus Hale returned to the ruins to verify the coordinates hidden in Langford's files. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that mirrored the stars. Near the collapsed western wall, Amelia Cross found a fragment of glass engraved with numbers, part of Langford's timeline. She brushed off the soot and saw the words Phase 2 initiate. Marcus Hale said, "He knew it would survive the fire." Amelia Cross said, "He wanted us to find it." Behind them, a distant figure watched from the shadows. Clara Wynne, silent, recording their every move before vanishing into the night mist. The following morning, Dr. Amelia Cross and Dr. Marcus Hale entered the university archives with a temporary access pass. The old stone corridors smelled of dust and forgotten years. Amelia Cross said, "Langford spent most of his nights here before the fire." Marcus Hale said, "He probably hid something where no one would ever look." They stopped before a locked iron door marked Restricted Section. Amelia Cross brushed off soot from its brass plaque, noticing faint scorch marks like fingerprints. Inside, under a heavy tarp, they discovered an old journal, half burned yet legible. The last page carried Langford's handwriting. The experiment was not mine anymore. At twilight, Amelia Cross sat at an old oak table beneath stained glass windows, reading Langford's fragile journal pages. The words spoke of a hidden location and a cryptic name, Aether Chamber. "Doctor." Marcus Hale leaned over her shoulder. Marcus Hale said, "Could it be a code name for the experiment?" Amelia Cross said, "Or the place where it happened." The journal also mentioned a person only called the informant. As the last light faded, a shadow moved across the window. The sound of a shoe echoed from the hallway. Amelia Cross whispered, "Someone else is here." The next night, Amelia Cross returned alone. The empty halls hummed with silence. She followed the faint coordinates scribbled in Langford's notes, leading her to an underground stairwell beneath the physics building. The air was colder. The deeper she went, her flashlight flickered as she whispered, "Langford, what were you hiding?" At the base, She found an abandoned laboratory filled with obsolete computers and decaying cables. In the center, etched into the floor, was the spiral symbol, glowing faintly under ultraviolet light. Her breath caught as she heard a voice behind her. Clara Wynne said, "You found it sooner than I expected." Clara Wynne stepped forward, her voice steady but eyes weary. Clara Wynne said, "Langford wasn't alone. He was forced to build what he feared most." Amelia Cross said, "By who?" Clara Wynne replied, "Dean Richard Voss and his benefactors." She handed Amelia a black notebook filled with coded data. The last page bore Langford's initials beside a single line. Project Aether was activated prematurely. Marcus Hale burst in, breathless. Marcus Hale said, "Security's coming. They know we're here." Clara Wynne whispered, "You'll have to run, but remember this. The truth isn't hidden, it's buried." Amelia Cross, Marcus Hale, and Clara Wynne emerged through a back exit as alarms blared across the campus. Rain poured over the courtyard, washing soot from the walls. They took shelter under the archway of the old chapel. Marcus Hale said, "If Voss was behind this, he'll come after us next." Clara Wynne said, "He already has." Langford tried to warn the world because he saw what Aether could do: rewrite the laws of energy. Amelia Cross looked up at the storm clouds and said softly, "He didn't burn his work to hide it. He burned it to stop it." Lightning flashed as the truth began to take shape. Night fell over the outskirts of the city as Dr. Amelia Cross and Dr. Marcus Hale arrived at an abandoned observatory hidden within the forest. The coordinates from Clara Wynne's notebook led them here. The wind moaned through broken windows, carrying the scent of rust and ozone. Marcus Hale said, "Langford ran simulations here before he disappeared." Amelia Cross replied, "Then this is where it began." Dust-covered monitors flickered to life as she connected the old drive labeled Aether fragment to. Lines of data scrolled faster than the system should allow. A voice file autoplayed. Professor Edward Langford said, "To unlock energy, one must first destroy the balance that binds it." The room pulsed with blue light as the temperature dropped. As the data finished loading, equations formed a three-dimensional holographic structure, a sphere pulsating with electric arcs. Marcus Hale whispered, "It's generating power from nothing." Amelia Cross said, "Or from everything around it." The lights flickered violently as the ground trembled. Alarms echoed from old speakers. On the holographic sphere, a human silhouette briefly appeared. Professor Edward Langford's recorded image. He said, "Aether is self-sustaining, but it feeds on equilibrium. Stop it before it consumes all energy." The image vanished, leaving only static and the sound of distant thunder. Amelia Cross whispered, "He created the end of everything." Hours later, Amelia Cross and Marcus Hale retreated to the old university lab to analyze the footage. Clara Wynne arrived unannounced, soaked by rain. Clara Wynne said, "I warned you not to activate that file." Marcus Hale said, "It triggered something in the network." She placed a small metallic cube on the table. Clara Wynne said, "Langford called this an Aether key. It was meant to shut the system down." The cube vibrated faintly, emitting a soft hum. Amelia Cross said, "And if it doesn't," Clara Wynne said quietly, "then it will erase everything within range." Outside, the storm intensified, lightning flashing against the lab's shattered windows. As they debated, the door burst open, and Laura Whitmore stepped inside with two security officers. Laura Whitmore said, "The dean knows what you're doing. This research belongs to the university." Amelia Cross said, "Langford died trying to bury it, not share it." Laura Whitmore smirked. Laura Whitmore said, "You think he acted alone?" She pulled a pistol from her coat, aiming at the ether key. Marcus Hale stepped between them. Marcus Hale said, "If you destroy that, we'll never stop what's coming." In the tension, the cube's hum deepened, shaking the floor as the monitors lit up again, displaying Langford's encrypted countdown. The hum reached a pitch that made the glass vibrate. Amelia Cross yelled, "It's activating again!" Marcus Hale grabbed the cube, pressing the engraved symbol. The lights exploded in a flash of white. When the glare faded, Laura Whitmore and the guards were gone. Only scorch marks remained on the floor. The computers rebooted, displaying one final message: containment breached. Clara Wynne said, "It's too late now." Amelia Cross looked around, realization dawning. Langford's experiment wasn't destroyed, she said. "It's spreading. Outside." The power grid flickered across the city skyline as the night turned eerily silent. The night bled into dawn as Dr. Amelia Cross and Dr. Marcus Hale drove through the empty outskirts toward a decommissioned research facility once owned by the university. The power grid still flickered from the ether surge. Inside the car, silence pressed heavily between them. Amelia Cross said, "Langford hid something here." "It's where the first experiment happened," Marcus Hale said. "If Voss built this place, he'll have people guarding it," she replied. "Then we better move fast." When they reached the gate, the logo of Langford Research Initiative shimmered faintly beneath grime. The truth, Amelia thought, was waiting in the dark, buried but alive. Inside the abandoned facility, flickering emergency lights guided their steps through long corridors lined with shattered glass. The air smelled of metal and dust. Marcus Hale whispered, "No signs of guards," Amelia Cross said. "Then they were here before us." They entered the main control room, where old computers still hummed faintly. A single screen displayed encrypted files titled Project Aether Phase 2. Clara Wynne's voice came through a nearby speaker, distorted and calm. Clara Wynne said, "You shouldn't have come here. Voss is already inside." Amelia Cross looked around as a secondary monitor switched on, revealing live footage of Dean Richard Voss descending an elevator deep below. They followed the footage to a hidden elevator shaft. The descent took them hundreds of feet underground. The doors opened to a circular chamber filled with humming conduits and glass tanks, pulsing with faint light. In one tank floated a preserved notebook, Langford's original log. Amelia Cross said, "This is it," a voice echoed from above. Dean Richard Voss said, "He failed to control it, but I want." He emerged from shadows, calm and resolute. Marcus Hale stepped forward. "You killed him, didn't you?" Voss smiled coldly. Dean Richard Voss said, "No, Doctor." "Langford destroyed himself trying to save you." His hand pressed a panel, activating the ether core. The chamber roared as the ether core ignited, casting arcs of light that carved shadows into the steel walls. Clara Wynne appeared through the access tunnel, shouting over the noise. Clara Wynne said, "Voss, stop!" "The core isn't stable." He turned, unshaken. Dean Richard Voss said, "Langford was too weak to finish it." "I am not." Amelia Cross ran to the control panel, slamming her hand against the emergency lockout. Sparks flew. Marcus Hale pulled Clara to safety as conduits burst overhead. Amelia Cross yelled, "Langford tried to stop this because he saw what it would become. A chain reaction without end." The core pulsed faster, time collapsing into light. The explosion subsided into silence. The ether core stood dark, its glow fading like dying embers. Dean Richard Voss lay unconscious near the control panel. Amelia Cross knelt beside the burned notebook. Its last line read, "The truth will live if they seek it." Marcus Hale said. He didn't mean to destroy the world. He wanted to save it, Clara Wynne whispered. Langford never failed. He warned us. As dawnlight filtered through cracked ceiling vents, Amelia Cross closed the notebook. She said softly, "Then we'll finish what he started, by keeping it buried." Outside, the first rays of sun pierced the rising smoke, hinting that the secret still breathed beneath the ash. Morning came with an unnatural stillness. Across the skyline, power grids blinked erratically, and the air shimmered faintly as if charged with unseen energy. Dr. Amelia Cross stood atop the ruined research compound staring toward the city. "Doctor," Marcus Hale said, "it's spreading faster than before." She replied, "The Aether network is consuming power sources one by one." Clara Wynne joined them, eyes red from sleepless nights. Clara Wynne said, "Langford's equation predicted this. Balance collapsing in reverse." A distant explosion lit the horizon, followed by a rolling thunder that wasn't from the sky. Amelia Cross whispered, "The collapse has begun." Within hours, the university was evacuated. Students fled while alarms echoed through every corridor. Amelia Cross and Marcus Hale raced toward the archives to recover Langford's secondary log. Marcus Hale said, "If we can find his counter formula, maybe we can stop it." Amelia Cross said, "He wouldn't destroy everything without leaving a way to contain it." As they reached the sub-basement, the air trembled with static. Papers floated mid-air, suspended by electromagnetic force. Amelia Cross said, "The ether field is rewriting physics itself." Sparks shot from light fixtures, and the marble walls pulsed like living skin. Deep underground, they discovered a sealed containment vault covered in Langford's handwriting. Inside were rows of small data drives labeled with mathematical sequences. Clara Wynne appeared, breathless. Clara Wynne said, "I found something upstairs. The Dean's escape protocol." Amelia Cross said, "Richard Voss is trying to isolate the core underground." Marcus Hale said, "That will destroy half the city." The vault lights flickered as a hidden speaker crackled. Dean Richard Voss's recorded voice said, "If you hear this, Aether has breached containment. The city is the sacrifice." Clara Wynne said, "He's turning it into a weapon." They emerged from the vault into the open air, only to find the sky rippling with spirals of light. Entire buildings flickered like fading memories. Clara Wynne said, "We can't contain it anymore." Amelia Cross said, "We have one chance, the ether key." Marcus Hale took the cube from his coat, its glow unstable. Marcus Hale said, "If I trigger it here, it could neutralize the core or vaporize everything." Amelia Cross met his gaze, silent resolve in her eyes. Clara Wynne whispered, "Then it's your choice." The wind howled, carrying distant sirens as reality itself began to bend. Dr. Marcus Hale pressed the cube's center, and time seemed to freeze. A deep hum shook the air, followed by a pulse of pure light expanding outward. Amelia Cross shielded her face as buildings shattered into fragments of glowing dust. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Then the horizon imploded into a blinding void. When the light faded, the storm was gone. Clara Wynne said, "He did it." Amelia Cross stood trembling, the cube's remains cooling in her palm. She whispered, "No, he contained it inside himself." Far away, the skyline flickered once more. A heartbeat left behind by Langford's forbidden creation. The sun rose weakly over a quiet, broken city. Dr. Amelia Cross walked through the silence, the sound of her boots echoing against streets littered with glass and ash. Clara Wynne followed closely behind, her coat fluttering in the wind. Amelia Cross said, "Marcus bought us time, But how long before it restarts? Clara Wynne said. Langford's notes mentioned a failsafes, hidden somewhere no one would think to look. They entered the ruins of the old university now, cracked and leaning. Dust shimmered in the light, filtering through collapsed ceilings. On a scorched wall, someone had carved a phrase, "The truth survives in memory." Inside the university's ruined lecture hall, Amelia Cross found the old blackboard still standing, covered in faded chalk. She brushed away soot and saw a faint diagram, Langford's final formula, incomplete yet familiar. Clara Wynne said, "He must have rewritten it after the fire." Amelia Cross said, "He left it here because this is where he ended it." They noticed something etched into the wood beneath the board. "Vault C," Clara Wynne said. "The catacombs." Amelia Cross nodded. The revelation struck her. Langford's failsafe wasn't just data. It was something he built beneath the foundations. They descended into the catacombs beneath the campus, narrow tunnels lined with ancient stone. The deeper they went, the stronger the static hum became. At the end of a narrow passage stood a sealed steel door marked Vault C. Amelia Cross said, "Langford hid his final creation here." They forced the lock and stepped into a chamber filled with glass cylinders glowing faintly. In the center stood a cryogenic pod with Professor Edward Langford's name engraved on its side. Clara Wynne whispered, "He didn't die in the fire." Amelia Cross' breath caught as she saw a faint pulse on the display. Langford was alive. Professor Edward Langford's eyes flickered open as power returned to the pod. His voice was weak but steady. Professor Edward Langford said, "You've seen what happens when balance fails." Amelia Cross said, "You burned your work to protect us." Langford said, "No, I burned it to erase the path back to this place." Clara Wynne stepped closer. Clara Wynne said, "The ether still breathes. It's in the air now." Langford nodded slowly. Professor Edward Langford said, "Then you must decide, reveal it to save the world or bury it to save humanity." The chamber lights dimmed, awaiting their choice. Hours later, the morning storm broke above the ruins as Amelia Cross and Clara Wynne stood outside the old university once more. Clara Wynne said, "What will you do?" Amelia Cross held Langford's notebook, now complete, the equations glowing faintly in daylight. She said, "The world isn't ready." She placed the notebook in a steel case and sealed it beneath the rubble. Thunder rolled across the sky, echoing Langford's final warning. Amelia Cross whispered, "He was right. The truth must burn before it's understood." As they walked away, lightning flashed across the skyline, and for a brief instant, the symbol of Aether glowed in the clouds.